Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really interesting case study. It's about a project where the philosophy, the core idea, is almost more important than the tech itself. We're talking about coding Dino, or Dino. It's a meme coin launched on the Base blockchain back in March 2024. Now, we've gathered quite a bit of material here, looking into its structure, how it performed, the code underneath it all. And the big questions you, our listener, brought up are pretty fundamental. Things like, who is the team, actually? What's their vision? What are their future plans? And maybe just as important, how often do they actually talk to their community?
Yeah, those are the key questions. And what's really fascinating about Dino is that the answer to pretty much all of them circles back to one thing, the code itself.
Yeah.
Dino was set up almost like an antidote to crypto scams. It's built on this pretty innovative ERC-50 protocol.
ERC-50, right.
Yeah, it's an open source fair launch thing, specifically designed to stop stuff like rug pulls, which, let's be honest, are all too common in the meme coin world.
So it's like a statement of intent written in code. Their approach seems almost radical. Get rid of the human element, get rid of the potential for fraud. That's the blueprint we're diving into. And just for anyone tracking, the official handle is at DinoBase on X, and the base contract address ends in 8177. We'll link it, of course.
But the real paradox here, the thing we really need to grapple with in this deep dive is this. Technically, the project did everything right. It delivered on that promise of integrity, solid foundation, and yet it's really struggled in the market, dramatically, actually. So the interesting part is seeing how that core philosophy, code over people, how that shaped the launch, but then maybe constrained them later when facing the rough and tumble of the crypto market. That price history tells a story.
Okay, let's start right there then with the team structure. Because that was the first question. Who are these people? And the answer is kind of blunt, isn't it?
It is. The short answer, which is also kind of their whole mission statement, is that there's no public information about specific team members, founders, leadership. Nothing.
And that's not an accident, right? It's not like sloppy record keeping. It's the whole point.
Exactly. The project runs on this very explicit principle. Trust no one but the code. It's almost ideological. It's a direct response, really, to an industry where you see so many anonymous founders popping up, leveraging that anonymity, and then, well, disappearing with the funds.
Right.
So by staying totally anonymous, Dino deliberately shifts focus away from, charismatic founders or a central team, the very people who historically could pull off scams. All the trust is supposed to be in the decentralized setup and the community.
Okay, but that raises a question for me. It sounds good, like a political statement almost. But practically speaking, how does a community control things if there's no one visibly steering the ship, handling marketing or development? Doesn't an anonymous team actually end up less accountable in some ways, even if the code prevents one specific type of scam?
That's the tension, absolutely. They basically traded one kind of accountability for another. They swapped personal accountability, like the fear of damaging your reputation if you rug pull for technical accountability, which is enforced by the smart contract itself. Their pitch wasn't trust us. It was trust the math, trust the fair launch contract. And they put that to the test immediately with the pre-sale.
Okay, yeah, walk us through how that fair launch actually worked, because this is where that ERC-50 protocol really showed its value, right? Building that initial trust even with an anonymous team.
It was definitely more sophisticated than your average ICO. So users deposited their ETH directly into the Dino smart contract. But, and this is the crucial part, the technical reassurance that made it stand out before the project hit its funding goal, its hard cap, investors could actually withdraw their funds anytime, get a full refund.
Wow, okay. That is a big shift. So you're not just throwing money into a black box and hoping for the best. You're participating, but you have an escape hatch until the very last moment. You can back out if things look shaky.
Exactly. It completely changes the trust dynamic pre-launch. You weren't forced into a pool that might just, collapse or get rugged halfway through. And it seemed to resonate. Dino hit its hard cap pretty fast.
How fast are we talking?
Raised 301 ETH. From over 1,400 different addresses, all in just 2 days.
Wow. 301 ETH in 2 days.
Yeah, that number really shows how much appetite there was, or maybe desperation, for something genuinely secure. People bought into the code's promise.
Okay, 301 ETH, 1,400 plus people, anonymous team. That initial success is pretty striking. But the final piece, the thing that really kills the rug pull possibility, that happens automatically right after the cap is hit.
That's the clincher. That's where the philosophy gets cemented in code.
Yeah.
Once that 301 ETH target was reached, the smart contract just executed a pre-programmed sequence exactly as the ERC-50 standard demands. It automatically created a trading pair on Uniswap V2, put all the collected ETH in as liquidity, and then this is the most critical step. It permanently locked all the liquidity provider tokens, the LP tokens, inside the contract itself.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. Permanently locked within the contract itself. Why is that such a game changer compared to how most meme coins launch? What does it practically mean for those anonymous devs?
It means it's completely out of their hands. Non-custodial, self-executing. You know, the classic rug pull happens when the founders hold those LP tokens, which represent ownership of the liquidity pool. They can just sell those tokens, drain all the ETH, and boom, the token people bought is worthless.
Right.
By locking the LT tokens permanently in the contract, the developers literally cannot access that pooled ETH. Even if they suddenly had a change of heart and wanted to run off with the money, it's technically impossible. The function just isn't there.
So the trust mechanism is absolute, irreversible. It's like they proved they were trustworthy by making it impossible for themselves not to be. The team is the mechanism.
Yeah.
Okay. That answers the who is the team question. Now, let's move to that next core question from our listener. What about their vision, their future plans? How do they communicate that stuff?
Yeah, and this is where that same philosophy creates, let's say, challenges if you're looking for traditional signposts. Dino just doesn't have a standard white paper.
No white paper.
Nope. No detailed roadmap outlining Q1 goals, Q2 deliverables, not even an official website in the way you'd normally expect, laying out a grand vision.
That's jarring. Especially if you come from like traditional tech or even just most other crypto projects. Usually there's a manifesto, a plan, something. Dino seems to just reject all of that.
Well, if you connect it back to the core idea, it seems the project views the smart contract code as the documentation. The vision is fully contained in making the fair launch work and letting it run. It's verifiable code over marketing hype. Right? So if you want the roadmap, you're meant to go read the ERC-50 protocol docs on GitHub. The code isn't just the product. It's the promise, the mission, the governance, everything, all rolled into one immutable script.
So the vision isn't about adding features or making partnerships or growing an ecosystem. The vision was the fair launch itself. That feels very static, especially for crypto.
And that leads directly to how it operates now. Without a central team pushing a formal plan, the project just is a community-driven thing. And it's a big community, don't get me wrong. Last check, something like 146,000 token holders.
146,000.
Yeah, but it's 146,000 individuals without any formal centralized structure to coordinate, marketing pushes or development goals or anything like that.
Okay, so that brings us right to the communication frequency question. How active is this entity? On social media, like that @DinoBase account on X, are they out there promoting, explaining strategy, anything?
We have to split that into two periods, then and now. Back at the start, historically, yes, there was definite activity. The @DinoBase account was quite active in early 2024. But the focus was very specific. It was all about explaining the ERC-50 protocol, arguing why it was better, engaging with other developers, crypto figures, very technical conversations.
Oh, okay. So they weren't silent initially, but they were marketing the concept, the technology, trying to position ERC-50 as maybe a new standard.
Exactly. Selling the integrity.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the Dino token hype itself, but fast forward to today, late 2025. If you compare it to other meme coins that are still, actively trying to grow, the difference is stark. The current activity level, the marketing intensity, it seems really limited. You don't see daily updates, strategic announcements, partnership news, big community pushes. They have a Telegram channel, sure, but there's just no evidence of that aggressive, ongoing promotion the market seems to demand.
And that limited activity, that quietness now, is really just the logical outcome of their core philosophy, isn't it? If you genuinely believe the code is perfect and the market should reward integrity on its own, why would you bother with all the messy human stuff like marketing?
That seems to be the underlying logic, yeah.
Yeah.
And it leads to this structural rigidity. The implied future plans, or maybe the lack of explicit plans, is tied directly to this team absence.
Yeah.
Because there's no visible, accountable team.
Then there's zero proactive marketing, zero structured community building after that initial launch phase.
Right. And it means no new product development. Because the contract is immutable, fixed. No roadmap execution, because there is no roadmap. No partnerships being announced. And, maybe most critically, when the price starts falling, no transparency updates. No communication to holders about, hey, here's how we're thinking about the market, or here's what we're trying. It's like they built this technically brilliant machine, launched it, and then just walked away from the controls.
That rigidity sounds like a major vulnerability when the market shifts.
It is. The structure prevented failure by design, in one way the rug pull, but the resulting absence of human intervention prevented sustained success as a consequence. It created a kind of vacuum.
A vacuum the competition was happy to fill, I imagine.
Precisely.
Okay, so that leads us to the technical integrity itself. We've established the code is central. Was the promise kept? Was the Dino contract actually as secure and fair as they claimed? Did it hold up?
On that front, the analysis is pretty clear-cut. Yes, the Dino contract is technically secure. It delivered on the ERC-50 promises. When you look at the code, there's no evidence of hidden malicious stuff. No honeypot functions to trap buyers' funds, no secret transaction taxes skimming off the top, and like we discussed, absolutely no way to pull the liquidity rug. The code's promise of safety, it was fully delivered.
Let's spend a moment on the specifics here because this really is Dino's main achievement. What exact features did they build in to guarantee that integrity?
Yeah, the security is layered and it's all visible. The code's open source, verified on base scan. First off, no admin keys. The contract inherits specific structures like fair launch token, and importantly, it uses something called a reentrancy guard.
Okay, for listeners maybe not deep into Solidity, why is a reentrancy guard important? What kind of attack does that stop?
Right, so a reentrancy attack is a pretty nasty common exploit. It's where a malicious external contract tricks the target contract, Dino, in this case, into letting it call back into Dino multiple times before the first call is even finished. Without a guard, an attacker could potentially loop calls during, say, a token transfer or a liquidity function and basically drain funds repeatedly. Including the reentrancy guard shows they weren't messing around. They knew the common attack vectors and protected against them. It shows real technical competence.
So unlike a lot of projects calling themselves decentralized but secretly having an admin wallet with override powers, Dino truly locked itself down from the start. The code rules itself.
Correct. Then second, that permanent LP lock, we confirmed it's irreversible. The mechanism locking those liquidity provider tokens is final. The money stays bound to the Uniswap pair. That remains its biggest security selling point against a total collapse initiated by the team.
And what about ensuring fairness during the launch itself? Preventing manipulation?
That's the third piece. Fair distribution enforcement. The contract was specifically coded to block other smart contracts, non-EOA wallets, from participating in the presale.
Why block other contracts?
It's a key defense against bots and sophisticated actors who might use scripts to snipe large amounts of the token supply right at launch, or dump huge amounts immediately after, crashing the price for everyone else. Plus, it enforced strict limits on how much each individual wallet address could buy during the presale. This helped ensure that initial 301 ETH came from a wide base, those 1,400 plus addresses, rather than just a few whales controlling everything from day one.
Okay, so it paints a picture of, like, technical perfection, everything a safety-conscious crypto investor might want. But we hinted at this earlier, that kind of ironclad security, that immutability, often comes with trade-offs, right? What were the built-in limitations here?
Yeah, it's a classic trade-off. Dino optimized 100% for security and fair launch, but that came at the cost of flexibility and growth potential down the line. The biggest limitation is simply contract immutability. Once that code is on the blockchain, it's set in stone. It cannot be changed, upgraded, patched. Now, that's why it's secure and no one can tamper with it. But it also means if the market changes, if a competitor comes out with some amazing new feature, or even if hypothetically a bug was discovered later, Dino can adapt.
So the coding Dino is basically fossilized, perfectly preserved, but unable to evolve from its initial state.
That's a great analogy. And it leads right to the second limitation, no utility development. Because the code can't change, the token is stuck being purely a meme coin. There are no plans, nor the possibility of adding plans later for things like staking rewards to encourage holding or yield farming or any other mechanism to give the token a use case beyond just speculation on its price.
And then there's the token supply itself. That often becomes an issue for tokens without a burn mechanism or utility sink.
Exactly. The third issue is the potential max supply inflation risk, or maybe dilution is a better word. The total supply is capped at 20 billion Dino tokens, with about 10 billion currently circulating. In a meme coin context, especially one with zero utility and no way to reduce the supply over time, 20 billion is a lot. It means for the price per token to reach really high levels, the total market cap needed would have to be absolutely massive. It kind of puts a damper on expectations for huge individual token price gains unless the whole project's value explodes exponentially.
Okay, so the project essentially locked itself into a secure box, protected from internal threats, but also locked out the possibility of significant internal evolution or economic management. Now, here's where it gets really critical. How did this technically perfect, secure, fair project actually perform in the market? The price story sounds like a roller coaster.
It really is. The price narrative is dramatic, and it painfully illustrates that technical perfection is just one piece of the puzzle for market success.
Okay, let's trace that journey. Launch in March 2024. Where did it go from there?
It launched at a tiny fraction of a cent, around 0.000011 scene. But because it had this strong narrative, this secure, fair, anti-scam token, it caught fire initially. It rode that wave of finally something trustworthy and early base chain enthusiasm. That momentum carried it all the way up to an all-time high of 0.00598 in January 2025.
Wow, 0001 to almost 006. That's
Roughly a 5,000% gain from launch, about 50x. Even before that crazy January peak, it had a decent run earlier, hitting around 0.00023 back in April 2024.
A 5,000% gain is phenomenal by any standard. It really validates that initial idea people were willing to pay for perceived safety and fairness. But crypto success isn't just about the peak, it's about holding on. And we know it didn't stay up there. What happened after January 2025?
Yeah, that's when the floor just fell out. A persistent, pretty brutal decline started. From that January peak to now, November 2025, Dino is down about 91%.
91%. Ouch.
Yeah, it's currently trading somewhere in this 0.0011 to 0.0012 range. Almost all of that peak speculative value, gone.
A 91% drop. That requires some serious conviction or maybe just hope from anyone holding. What was the mood like in the community during that long slide?
From the limited chatter you can still find, it sounds like pure fatigue for anyone who bought near the top. The quote that stood out was having to endure 15 weeks of continuous decline and 36 weeks of sideways trading. Just watching the momentum completely evaporate. The remaining narrative seems to be mostly just holding and waiting, hoping the overall meme coin market comes back or maybe base chain gets hot again. Basically waiting for outside factors to lift the price because there's no internal catalyst coming.
Okay, this is the crucial diagnosis part. Why the 91% collapse? Was it the anonymous team's fault somehow? Did the tech fail after all, or was it something else entirely?
The evidence points overwhelmingly towards broader market dynamics. It was not a technical failure. The code worked, the lock held. It wasn't team embezzlement or anything like that. The collapse seems to be almost purely a case of market forces hitting a project that was structurally unable to respond.
Let's break down those external factors then. You called it an attention collapse. What drove that?
It was like the whole meme coin sector just deflated, starting early 2025. The main issue was that speculative interest, the mindshare, just vanished. Think about the percentage of total crypto trader attention and volume going into meme coins. That figure dropped by about 90%. It went from maybe 20% in late 2024 down to just 2.5% by October 2025. When the whole category loses that much relevance, projects like Dino, which were basically pure hype plays built on a technical foundation, they get hit hardest and first.
And you saw that in things like Google searches too, right? People just stopped looking for them.
Exactly. Google Trends for meme coins went from its peak index of 100 down to just 7 over that same period. The public interest, the narrative fuel, just dried up.
And then there was the competition problem. Dino's unique selling point, the ERC50 security, didn't stay unique for long.
That's a huge factor. We saw something like 13 million new meme coin projects launch in the past year. Think about that number. It completely flooded the market.
13.
Yeah. It diluted capital, diluted attention. When Dino launched, its fair launch was a big deal. 6 months later, thousands of projects were copying it or claiming similar features on Base and other chains. Dino's main differentiator got commoditized, basically wiped out as a unique advantage. And all this happened while the wider crypto market was shaky anyway. We saw nearly $1 trillion, $960 billion vanish from the total crypto market cap between January and March 2025. In that kind of environment, the most speculative assets, like meme coins with no utility, are always the first to get dumped.
Okay, so a perfect storm of external factors hammered the price. But what about the team's role, or lack thereof? They didn't cause the storm, but did their philosophy, their absence, make the damage worse?
Absolutely. Their responsibility isn't in causing the drop through bad actions, but in failing to mitigate it through inaction. The price decline wasn't due to team malfeasance. They kept their code promise. It was due to team absence when it came to market strategy, adaptation, and growth.
So that structural perfection, the immutability we admired for its security, actually became a massive liability in a down market.
It really did. In a market that moves incredibly fast, driven by narratives and competition, just standing still means you're effectively falling behind rapidly. The very limitations baked in by their code is king philosophy directly worsened the decline. Things like, number one, zero marketing or community building after the initial launch buzz faded. When the market tanks, you need someone out there rallying the community, pushing promotions, making noise. Dion's philosophy prevented that.
And number two, no narrative evolution. It just stayed a fair launch experiment.
Right. And that story just wasn't powerful enough to compete with 13 million other projects, constantly creating new memes, new lore, promising new features.
Right.
Dino didn't evolve its story beyond the initial tech pitch. Then there was no ecosystem development. That ERC50 idea was clever, maybe even genius, but they didn't leverage it to try and build a platform or get it adopted as a standard. It just became another tool anyone could copy on base chain, losing its novelty.
And there's a practical point too, isn't there, about being anonymous? Does that limit things like getting listed on major exchanges?
That's a fundamental handicap, yes. Without a visible, legally identifiable team, Dino is basically disqualified from listings on most top-tier exchanges. It can't easily form major partnerships or run big marketing campaigns that require compliance checks. That structural choice to be anonymous actively capped its growth potential by limiting its access to mainstream capital and platforms.
So the code was perfect, but the mechanism got copied everywhere. And when the market turned hostile, the team, by design, wasn't there to fight back or adapt.
That's the summary right there. The code guaranteed survival against one specific threat, the rug pull, but it offered zero defense against market apathy, competition, and the need for ongoing human effort.
Okay, let's bring this all together then, our final synthesis of this deep dive. We started asking about the team, the vision, the communication.
And what we found was this project with truly impeccable code integrity, the ultimate shield against centralized failure, that code over people idea. It worked, technically. The contract is secure, liquidity locked, no rug possible. That's why it initially soared 5,000%.
But that massive price failure afterwards, the 91% crash, seems to be a direct consequence of centralized inactivity. The team pointed to the code for answers about who and vision, but the code had no answers for how to navigate a bear market, how to compete, how to keep a community engaged long-term.
So what it really demonstrates, I think, is the serious limitation of relying only on technical innovation, even something as good as ERC50, without also having a smart, adaptable human strategy for marketing, for finding utility, for building and sustaining a community, especially in a sector like meme coins, which is so driven by hype and trends.
Security is table stakes, maybe. It's necessary. But Dino seems to prove it's nowhere near sufficient for lasting success in the market.
It's like the perfect lab experiment that shattered when it hit the unpredictable real world of human markets and intense competition. It proves code can secure your money, but maybe only ongoing human effort can build lasting value, at least in this corner of crypto.
So this leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on as you look at other projects.
Yeah, if Dino's story suggests that maybe 90% or more of a meme coin's fate is tied to market wins, competition, and active marketing, and maybe only 10% or less is down to the initial technical setup and fairness, then is trust no one but the code actually a viable long-term strategy when there's no proactive team behind it? What really happens when flawless code runs into pure market exhaustion and there's nobody home to try and change the narrative or adapt? The Dino case suggests that technical genius alone might not be enough to win against the sheer gravity of market dynamics. Something to think about.